Hi, everyone, and thank you so much for participating in that voice thread and making that a really engaging conversation. I'm so glad that the technology worked and that you had a chance to really engage with each other and respond to the podcast. I did talk to Tom Holub, and I have some answers to some of the questions. I'm going to save those for class next week, so you can look forward to that, and we'll have some time to talk about that next week if you would like. Okay, so on to Module 4. After this, you are halfway there. Okay, so Module 4, we're transitioning from beginning reading to more advanced reading, and I'm going to introduce you to a way of thinking about how we're teaching reading, and it comes from an area of pedagogy called genre pedagogy. So I'm going to introduce you to basically a theory about thinking about teaching through a lens of looking at genre. And then I'm going to guide you into figuring out how you might apply this practically. So there are some readings and a video. And just before we get into that, just a quick introduction to what this idea of thinking about genre actually really looks like. So say you have, you need to support a student who's writing opinion writing. And they have a prompt, they have to respond to, what is your opinion on recycling or something like that. You could just help them, and you could think about the content and help them think about different parts of what they want to say, but a focus on genre shifts it a little bit, so you focus more on the expectations of actually what an opinion piece has in terms of language. So an opinion piece will use phrases like, you should do this, or I think you should, or we should, which is different than if you're writing a story, which wouldn't necessarily use the word should. So it's getting smart about what we're actually asking students to do. So there's a quick introduction. Now, Pauline Gibbons, who's much more eloquent than I, has an amazing book where that is focused on using this theory and this pedagogy. There also is a video here which shows what it looks like in practice. And then there is from the applied linguistics perspective, where we're going to get into the nuts and bolts of what that looks like. So kind of 3 parts here. There is a calendar, and what you'll notice from this calendar is everything is sometime this week, sometime this week, sometime this week, last week of this. There are no specific things that you need to post and then respond to. Instead, this is where you're going to kind of dig in to your own head and your own thinking, and you are going to do a journal response just to me so that I can kind of figure out where you are. So sometime this week, and you have a choice. You can do a journal or a voice thread. I just put the voice thread in since a lot of you seem to really enjoy that. So everything has to be done by Wednesday. And let's go into some more details here. So here is the readings and the video. Now it's your choice whether you want to read this first or watch this first. Basically, in this chapter, which is in a book for English language learners, I'm sure you're going to find it completely relevant to kids who aren't English language learners as well. It goes through what's called the teaching learning cycle, which is different, teaching this genre through different stages. So you can read and then watch, or watch and then read. It's up to you, depending on what might work for you. But do both of those before you tackle this genre workbook, which you're going to find quite difficult. So the idea is you try it, you get into it, you see what you can do. There's some activities that I would like you to try, and then bring it to class, and we will go over it then and answer questions and do some more details with that. Fieldwork. This is your last week of assessing and planning for intervention. Next week, we'll start working on curriculum design and implementation. So you are going to do another assessment from the menu of assessments in RTI 139 to 162, if those are appropriate. And then you're going to put together an if-then chart. We talked about this, our last class together, when we were talking about what what you were thinking for your students based on the assessment. So do this for one student, and on page 165 is the big chart. Now your chart is not going to look as big because you haven't done all those assessments. You've done a few assessments, and then you're basically going to call for what needs to be, what you would recommend for this student. So it's kind of like if you were going into a meeting reviewing the student, not necessarily an IEP yet, but kind of on the way there, and put together some kind of chart that makes sense for you. And you're going to load these onto your Reading Teacher blog, Reading Teacher Portfolio blog. Before you start your fieldwork, though, if you already have things up in your Reading Teacher Portfolio blog, have a look. I did put some comments in there, and they might kind of guide you one way or the other. For example, I've recommended a lot of you do the listening comprehension assessment because that might give you just another important perspective on your student. And again, feel free to look at what other people are doing as well. And not everyone actually has started that, so make sure that you're getting some stuff up there this week. Okay, there's the calendar. Okay, so there's the field work. So with your individual journal or VoiceThread, there are some prompts, and one is based on the reading and one is about how it's going in general. So you can choose to do a written response or a VoiceThread response. And the VoiceThread is set up so that it's private just to me, and I will respond on that. And the journal is also private, and I will respond in writing if you choose the journal. And we're just not looking for a whole lot of text here, just enough to answer the questions. Okay, I think that's everything. Let me know if there's any questions, and I will see you next week.